In a small town surrounded by fields and forests, Anna Vasilyevna's house stood isolated on the edge of the settlement. The old wooden shutters were always closed, the yard was overgrown with weeds, and the peeling paint on the walls highlighted the house's abandoned look. People in the area had long stopped paying attention to the house and its owner. Anna Vasilyevna was a woman in her mid-50s, silent and withdrawn. She went to the store once a week, never engaged in conversations, and only bought the bare essentials: bread, milk, and potatoes. Her strict face, tied scarf, and old coat gave the impression of a woman who had lived a hard life. The neighbors knew little about her. She had once worked as a nurse and later retired. She lived alone, without family. Some even believed she was a widow, but no one could have imagined the horrors that were unfolding behind the walls of her house. 25 years earlier, Anna had been completely different: young, energetic, and kind. She worked in a hospital and was devoted to her profession. One evening, as she was walking home through the dark streets of the town, she saw a man. He was sitting on the ground, leaning against the wall of an old warehouse. His face was covered in blood, and his clothes were torn. "Help me," he whispered as Anna approached. The man looked frightened, exhausted, and helpless. Anna didn't think twice. She helped him up and took him home. The man introduced himself as Igor. He said he was being hunted by some people, but refused to explain who they were or why. His eyes darted around nervously, as if expecting his pursuers to burst into the house at any moment. Anna took care of him. She cleaned his wounds, bandaged him, and fed him. For several days, Igor barely got out of bed, but as his strength returned, he became more talkative. However, his stories were strange and confusing. He spoke of a powerful organization threatening him, claiming his life was in danger. At first, Anna didn't believe him, deciding that he was simply scared and in shock. But soon, she began to feel uneasy. One night, she overheard Igor muttering to himself in a panic, "They'll find me. They won't leave me alone." She decided she had to protect him. At first, it seemed like care. Anna locked the doors so Igor wouldn't leave and fall into the hands of those allegedly hunting him. She brought him food and books and tried to calm him. But with each passing day, her behavior grew stranger. "You don't understand," she said, when Igor begged her to let him go. "Out there, death is waiting for you." He protested and tried to convince her there was no danger, but her face remained cold and impenetrable. "I'm saving you," she repeated. Weeks passed, then months. Igor realized he was a prisoner. He tried to escape. Once he managed to break the window in his room, but Anna heard the noise and burst into the room with a hammer in her hands. Her face was twisted with anger. "Don't you understand?" she screamed. "You'll die out there!" She boarded up the window, and from then on, she watched him even more closely. Igor tried shouting for help, calling out to anyone, but no one came. Anna's house was too far from others, and the rare passers-by didn't even glance in its direction. Years went by. Anna created a strange world for Igor, where everything was under her control. The room where he was held had only a bed, a table, and a few old chairs. She brought him books but tore out pages that mentioned dates or events. The newspapers she gave him were old and devoid of any useful information. The radio only played music. "It's safe here," she would say, bringing him food. He gradually lost his sense of time. He didn't know what year it was, how old he was, or if his family was still alive. Sometimes he would ask her, "Why are you doing this?" She would smile. "You'll understand someday." Her care had turned into obsession. The way she looked at him was no longer just strict. It had a fanatical gleam. But even after all these years, Igor never gave up hope. Time passed. Anna grew older, and her strength waned. One day, she fell ill. Her hands trembled and she coughed, but she continued to bring food, though less frequently. Igor could see that she was losing control. One night, he noticed that the door wasn't locked. This was his chance. He slowly opened it and stepped into the hallway. The house was dark and smelled of mildew. He made his way outside, breathing fresh air for the first time in 25 years. But the world felt foreign to him. The streetlights, passing cars, and strange devices in people's hands all terrified him. He ran to the nearest house and knocked on the door. "Help me," he whispered, just as he had 25 years ago. Anna woke up to the sound of noise outside. The light of police car sirens shone through the window. She knew it was over. When the police took her away, she kept repeating, "I saved him! I saved him!" Igor was taken to the hospital. He would have to adapt to a world that had changed. His youth had been stolen, his life ruined. Anna was tried and found guilty. But even in prison, she kept saying the same thing. "He's alive because of me." A year later, she died, never expressing remorse. Igor was left alone. The world felt empty, alien, lifeless. The people around him seemed unfamiliar, the technology frightened him, and the memories of the past haunted him. Sometimes he wondered, what if she had been right? What if there really had been danger outside? But in those moments he forced himself to look forward, trying to reclaim what had been taken from him. This story has no happy ending. It leaves more questions than answers.